Welcome to the Inferior View channel. In this video I will talk about anatomy of brain. So I will use a couple of anatomy models. So this is the lateral view of brain. This is the central sulcus. Anterior to the central sulcus you have the frontal lobe here. And this is the precentral gyrus, that is for motor. And this is the postcentral gyrus for sensory information. This area is the parietal lobe. And this is the occipital lobe all the way posteriorly. This is the lateral sulcus or lateral fissure. In some textbooks written lateral fissure. And this is the temporal lobe. Brainstem is located anteriorly and cerebellum is located posteriorly. This is the medial view. So the medial view you can see again, this is the frontal lobe. And this is the parietal lobe, this area. This is occipitoparietal sulcus. And that separates the parietal lobe from the occipital lobe here. This is the cingulate gyrus, it's not done properly in this model. Corpus callosum, that connects the two cerebral hemispheres. This is the lateral ventricle. So as you know, each cerebral hemisphere has a ventricle, lateral ventricle, so there's two of them. And they are separated here by septum pellucidum in the middle. So this can be the behind it is lateral ventricle, and this is the septum in the midline that's separating the two ventricles. This area that you see, that is the third ventricle, this area. This is the thalamus. And this is interthalamic adhesion connecting the two thalami. And this is the fornix connecting hypothalamus with the hippocampus. This is the choroid plexus that makes CSF. And this is the epithalamus that produces melatonin for sleeping, circadian rhythm. And this area is hypothalamus, and inferior to that, that is the optic chiasm. This is optic tract, and this is optic chiasm, optic nerve and optic chiasm. This is pituitary stalk. So the pituitary gland is not here actually. So, but this is the pituitary stalk or infundibulum. That's another name, infundibulum. Mammillary body, that is also part of the hypothalamus. This is mammillary body. So it's located posterior to the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is bigger. This area is midbrain, this area. So you can see the superior colliculus, which is for the visual reflex, and inferior colliculus, which is for the auditory reflex. You have also cerebral aqueduct that connects the third ventricle with the fourth ventricle. And here, partially, you can see the cerebral peduncles that contains sensory and motor fibers that is connecting the brainstem with the cerebral cortex. This area that you see, this is pons. And this is medulla oblongata. This is fourth ventricle, this that you see this thing. The fourth ventricle continues, goes all the way down to the spinal cord, and that becomes central canal. So inside the spinal cord, it's called central canal. And again, that contains CSF. And this thing is cerebellum, this brown structure. And this white things that you see, these are the fibers axons, and they are called arbor vitae. This is a different model, so this is still medial view. This should be medial view, not lateral view, medial view. Central sulcus is here, so this is the anterior lobe or frontal lobe. So anterior to the central sulcus, frontal lobe, not anterior lobe, frontal lobe. This is the anterior cerebral artery. So as you can see it from the medial view. Corpus callosum. This is the lateral ventricle. Choroid plexus. This is the third ventricle. And it's also thalamus. So the third ventricle is in the middle of the two thalami. Again, this is interthalamic adhesion. Hypothalamus. And the midbrain, so from here all the way to here, this is the midbrain area. This is the cerebral aqueduct, this thing that you see. Superior, inferior colliculi. This is the fourth ventricle. This is the pons. And medulla was below that. So this is the superior view, and you can see the longitudinal fissure. So that's separating the two cerebral hemispheres. Central sulcus, you can see in this view. That's the best view to see central sulcus here. So anterior to central sulcus, you have the frontal lobe. This is the precentral gyrus that is still part of the frontal lobe, so that's for motor activities. And this is the postcentral gyrus that is for the sensory. Parietal lobe, this whole area is the parietal lobe. And occipital lobe is all the way here at the background. Inferior view, you can see the frontal, each one is a frontal lobe. And this is the temporal lobe. And this is cranial nerve 1. So cranial nerve 1, the dendrites are all the way in the nasal cavity, and the fibers come here and synapses. And this area is called the olfactory bulb, and then the fibers continue, the axons are continuing here, and this is called olfactory tract. This is not actually cranial nerve 1, it's continuation of the same information, olfactory information. So this is the bulb, and this is the tract, and it goes all the way on the medial side of the temporal lobe, and the cortex of temporal lobe. This is the cranial nerve 2. So these are the optic nerves come here, and this is the optic chiasm. Some of the fibers cross here, some of them don't cross. And then it continues as the optic tract. Continues as optic tract. Pituitary stalk. So again, in this model, the pituitary gland is not here, so it will have been here in the middle. It is close to the optic chiasm. And this is the mammillary bodies. This is part of the hypothalamus, these two. Cranial nerve 3. This is coming from the ventral part of the midbrain. This is cerebral aqueduct, cerebral peduncle, and that is also part of the midbrain. And this is the cranial nerve 4, which is coming all the way from the dorsal part of the midbrain. This whole thing that you see, this is pons. Cranial nerve 5, thickest cranial nerve. Cranial nerve 6, you can see it, it's an area between pons and medulla oblongata, so it's located more medially. This is cranial nerve 7, actually. It's just a typo. Cranial nerve 7 is here. and cranial nerve 8. So it's hard to see it in this view, so 7 and then 8. So 6, 7, and 8. So I wrote 6 twice, okay, so 6, 7, and 8. There, so this area is medulla oblongata. And cranial nerve 9 is here. Cranial nerve 10. And cranial nerve 11. This is coming from the spinal cord, going all the way up through the foramen magnum. And cranial nerve 12 here. Cranial nerve 12. This brown area that you see, this is cerebellum. Thank you for watching, and if you have any question or comment, please write it in the comment section below. If you like the video, I hope you give it a thumb up and subscribe to the channel, as I regularly upload new content. And see you next time.